Well, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And we are back, and we took a little summer break that lasted through the fall. But anyway, we're back, and we're back with the co-host Leah Drake Stitt. And good morning, Leah.
Good
And
morning,
Thomas,
Frank.
the Colonel Chapman, is won't be here today, but he'll be back soon. And we have guest host Louis Bracy, my homeboy from Portsmouth, Virginia, and we had a high school fraternity back there in the day. But anyway, and we have Carl Snowden, another guest host. He's been on here before, and our featured guest, of course, is Lauren Victoria Bird. And good morning, Lauren. How you doing? And thanks again for agreeing to come on. I know you have a busy schedule, and we have a lot to talk about today, especially with what happened last night, and you came on
Hmm.
your show to kind of talk about that. So
Yeah.
let me tell you a little bit about Lauren first. But
Hmm.
I first saw her on. I'm a watcher of Roland Martin, and I saw her on there, and she is an occasional guest up there, giving her uh, take on things. And every once in a while, Lauren, you and Roland kind of go at it, but I guess he needs challenging every once in a while. But it's good for to have the differences of opinions up there. It's just hard to win with Roland on his show, but he gets the last word. But
Yeah.
you have your own show where you can get the last word. But
Yeah.
Lauren has a long history of journalism. She graduated from American University, and she's from Brooklyn, but has ties here in Virginia. Her mother is your mother from Suffolk,
She's actually from Emporia. So
Emporia. Okay.
landed in Franklin, Suffolk. Franklin, really Holland, Suffolk. Her house is in
Oh,
Holland.
okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
close to Portsmouth, and
Yeah.
I guess you spend a lot of time between both places because must spend
I
a
do.
lot of time here in Virginia because I don't hear that New York accent.
Yeah, that went away probably. Well, I guess if I go to New York, I was born in the Bronx, and
Oh, okay.
but half the family is from Virginia. My mother's side. My sister is career Navy. Went into Naval Station Norfolk. Stayed for 23 years. Met her husband, and lived in Virginia Beach. And my nephew lived in Virginia Beach and was a cop in Virginia Beach, as a matter of fact.
Wow. Wow.
But I grew up in New York on Long Island. My dad was a cop in New York,
Yeah.
and
A
so
lot of great ties down here, but you have that
yeah.
journalistic voice, so it's neither Virginia or New York. But anyway,
Yeah.
but she has a long history in journalism. Worked is occasionally on CNN. Worked for Associated Press, and of course, I mentioned Roland Martin. And if I leave out any other thing, you can mention that, Lauren. But now, and she created, and I like the fact that you kind of based in Virginia and
Mhm,
cover a lot of Virginia news as well as the national scene. But you
mhm.
created the Black Virginia News. Would you call it a network or more of a platform?
I would call it effectively a glorified blog that is a, newsletter. Newsletter publishing is blowing up right now for several people, Midas Touch and The Contrarian, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on newsletters. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Mhm.
It's a very
Yes.
direct way to meet to get to people their email.
Yes, indeed. And before we go off, of course, you're going to mention how people can tune into that
Mhm.
and join as far as membership. Um, Another thing I wanted, you've been on the traditional media and now you're sort of an independent
Mhm.
journalist. Do you feel a lot freer now being able to give more of opinion? Because it seemed like you kind of did that on CNN as well. Me watching some of the old footage,
Yeah.
you were more of an opinionated journalist as opposed to a news reader.
Yeah, what happens when you are on a big network like that is that conversation is really, of course, controlled by, as you can probably sense by watching, an executive producer and all the producers involved, the booking producer. You get pre-interviewed for those things for MSNBC and CNN. So they literally call you and ask you and say, "What are you going to say if we ask you this?" Like they want to know exactly what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you have your own platform, you do whatever you want. That's why Roland Martin and so many others, Don Lemon, Joy Reid, have their own platforms, not just because of the necessity of contracts ending, but you notice, particularly with Don Lemon, I mean, he is like a different person than he was what we saw on CNN,
Yeah,
and
Right.
and it's
totally different.
and it's a
Man
good
on the street.
yeah, it's a great thing because you
Mm-hmm.
can see there was a constraint there. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly, if you're black in particular, a lot of these conversations are not going to center around our community. And by the way, hi Carl, Leah, Bracy, how you guys doing?
Wonderful.
You'll notice the constraints, and for me, that was always problematic. Certain stories just do not get told unless we're telling them in our community, as I'm sure you've
Exactly.
sensed just from having a show.
Oh
If
yeah.
you have a show, you'll sense the things that come up would not generally come up. Uh, they would generally not be brought up by the Richmond Times Dispatch or the Virginian Pilot, and a lot of these papers too have a history of racism,
Oh
particularly the
yes.
Richmond Times Dispatch. So
Yes.
there would be no legacy reason that they would bring any of this up. And incidentally, my last job in politics was for Justin Fairfax, Virginia's 41st Lieutenant Governor. I was his communications director during 2019 when he was railroaded by the Democratic Party and by the media. And I
Right.
watched that up
Right.
close. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a great example of what happens when someone else tells your narrative. And for black men in this country specifically, it is highly problematic because there are not a lot of black men in these newsrooms. So
Mm-hmm.
I, a black woman, have to tell people who are lily white sitting up at the New York Times and the Washington Post point blank, I have to tell them it is highly unlikely that a black man sitting at Duke University, two black men, if you remember, one of his accusers had accused two black men, Corey Maggette, who
Yes. Exactly.
I'm not a big college basketball fan, so I didn't know who Corey Maggette was, all
Mm-hmm.
right, until this happened. But she'd accused Corey Maggette and Justin Fairfax in
Exactly.
1999 and 2000. And I had to tell these lily white reporters, look, if you think the two black guys could walk around at Duke University with allegations swirling and nobody was going to say anything, you're out of your mind. They just have no
Exactly.
sense of that. So that's part of the journalistic reason for Black Virginia News.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, when I asked you to come on, I wanted to talk about, and we will talk about the since the blue wave, and what we need to do to continue the momentum of the blue
Right.
wave into the midterms. And soon as we want to talk about that, what happens last night happened, and I look
Right.
at that as
Yes.
sort of,
Right.
we get this momentum, and then we want to take a
Give it
step
away.
back. Now it depends on how you feel about that. I know we want it to open up, and we don't want people to suffer, but
Right.
I was telling Leah earlier, it seemed like we hit the ball right back into Trump's court,
Mm-hmm.
because he's going to claim this as a victory, as a win,
Exactly.
and try to. I mean, I don't even want to look at Fox today because you know what's going to happen there. So, but let's talk about that. That happened last night, and of course we had one of our senators, Senator Kane,
Right.
to vote
Yes.
in the affirmative of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
let me get your take on that, Lauren, and we'll hear from the other panelists as well.
Right. Well, my take on it is that, of course, on Tuesday there was a historic moment in Virginia history. There were several historic moments. One
Mm-hmm.
is we were going to have a first black attorney general serving in January in the person of Jay Jones, who had an unnecessarily rough ride where the Democratic Party threw him under the bus and then
They
decided
did.
right at the end that, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should have a Democratic attorney general.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're going to have the first female governor, first Muslim American. The thing about the lieutenant governor, State Senator Hashmi, is she actually will be the first Muslim American statewide official in the entire country,
In the country.
not just Virginia. So
Uh-huh.
that's pretty amazing. So that was an extremely diverse ticket. The Democrats did make history, as led by Don Scott, and I'm sure you guys. You've had Don on the show as Speaker
Yes.
Scott on the show. He's of course himself a historic figure as the first black speaker of the Virginia House. And he pulled off something that hasn't happened in Virginia politics since 1987, almost like 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his deputy, Dan Helmer, who's the campaigns chair for the House Democrats in the state. But Don Scott did something incredible, amazing. His personality is extremely in fact, when I first met him, I thought he's from New York. I mean, because there's nothing Virginia about him. Like, he's just very sort of aggressive. So I figured this guy's from New York, but he's from Texas. At any rate, he pulled off something that has never happened. It hasn't happened in a generation of politics. And so, with all of that euphoria going into the week, Democrats have all this energy, and what happens? They give in and cave in to the Republicans yesterday. You could feel the cave in starting on Saturday when
Yes.
the Republican leader in the Senate, John Thune, said, "Hey, I'm not going to go out of session until we solve this," which really didn't mean that they were going to be in 24 hours. It just meant that, okay, we're just going to keep coming into session every single day. Incidentally, I worked in the U.S. Senate for 3 senators, and one of them being George Mitchell, who was in the leadership and would keep the Senate open forever. But at any rate, they capitulated. They gave the Republicans the 60 votes they needed to move forward and out of the shutdown. And the problem is they got nothing for it.
Nothing.
That's the problem. The problem is not ending the shutdown. The problem is not getting anything for it. So you've been messaging for 39 days that the healthcare tax credits not being extended past December 31 is going to mean a spike in people's healthcare coverage. You've been marking that for 39 days, and now we have a deal that doesn't include the extension of the healthcare tax credits. That makes no sense. And if you weren't going to get that deal, then don't tell people that that's what you were dealing for. Don't say that that's the most important thing to you if, in fact, you weren't going to have that in the deal. Having a vote on that doesn't mean anything. The Republican Party doesn't care about whether or not people have health care. We've known that since 2010 when President Obama did health care. So that's not news that they're going to vote against it and it's going to go down. So I'm not sure what part of the problem with the Democratic Party, I'll land with this, is that they have no leader. There's no leader of the party because the presidency is Republican. So the de facto leaders are in Congress, which is Chuck Schumer. And I'm embarrassed to say, as a New Yorker, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries, I think, is struggling under the bad decision making of Chuck Schumer. This is what you're watching. But when I go into the Capitol today, U.S. Capitol, I will probably be at Hakeem Jeffries' press conference, and I'll ask him. We've been asking him, is Schumer going to throw you under the bus? Are you guys on the same page? And of course, he said they were, and now we find out last night that they aren't.
Wow. Wow. And welcome again, Kyle, and give me your take on that. Kyle Snowden is a former director of civil rights in the state of Maryland and worked for the governor and really active in Maryland and out there sometimes with Lewis on boots on the ground protesting. But Kyle, give us your take on it.
Well, I think Lauren's analysis is on point. The thing I would say to her, and she's worked on Capitol Hill, so she should know this. Nothing is what it appears to be. I don't think we should assume that we know everything. There are a lot of things going on. There are a lot of factors that's moving. So I think we've yet to see what will actually come out of this. I know that people on the progressives are not satisfied with this. Her analysis of the fact that what it really has come out of this is a promise that they would vote sometime in December for the Affordable Care Act. And many people within the party, Democratic Party, don't accept the notion that that's enough. So I'm not sure we've seen the end to this shutdown. It appears to be that, but I'm not convinced that we're at that point, even though it seems that some Democrats have gotten on board. But remember, there's a lot of public concerns here, and those Democrats will be hearing from progressives all over the country. And I might just add, when Lauren was giving her analysis of things that have happened as a result of Tuesday's election, Lauren, I would add that in New York, your great state, there were 2 wonderful African-American women that got elected for the first time, one in Albany and the other in Syracuse. And in listening to those women over the weekend, just amazed at how they were able to, in their individual cities, be able to mobilize, organize, and energize a great coalition of people. So I think we look at the blue wave, and we need to be very, very careful as we do our analysis. Most people focus on the blue wave, talked about what happened in Virginia in terms of your state governor, the governor for the first time being a female in New Jersey. But I want people to know that there have been things happening all over the country that are not being reported. For example, in Annapolis, Maryland, where I'm at, we had an election. Do you know we elected for the first time? Every Democrat got elected. There are no Republicans now on Annapolis City Council. That is not by accident or coincidence or happenstance. I think people who could not vote against Trump voted against his surrogates and his policies. And it's very, very clear that affordability is really not the issue as they've crafted this to be. I think there's a strong, strong dislike for the man in the White House. And this affordability is just a nice word to be used, but it's really anti-Trump.
Yeah, and Lewis, I'll get to you, but I want to go to Leah. Leah, you are very involved here down here in the city of Portsmouth, a former school board member. Uh, how do you see this? I know you were excited about the blue wave, and do you see this as a like a big thorn in our side? What happened last night that sort of slows down that wave? I don't think it slows down the wave. The wave is there. It's what it is. But in any way, do you see it as a half step or a step backwards, or not really taking advantage of the momentum that we created with the wave?
Well, I really felt as though I had been punched in my gut, really. I was hoping that that last vote was not going to come in.
Right.
I don't feel as though they can trust the Republicans. They surely can't trust Donald Trump and anything he says.
Right.
So you're making a deal with the devil. You're making a deal that you cannot enforce. You're making a deal that they'll turn on you. I mean, Johnson, he has not even called the House back. And when the House comes back, who says they're going to be in agreement with what the Senate has brought to the table? So you're right back where you started. So I don't see where I felt so good about the momentum that we had. And I feel as though they kind of broke that momentum up. However, we still have a lot of work to do in order to hold them accountable. The people are going to have to hold them accountable because you cannot depend on your elected officials to hold them accountable. So I just don't see where we're going right now. I don't really see it helping us any at all. I don't see it helping us at all.
Wow. Now, Mr. Boots on the ground. I wanted to save you for last on this one because, well, one thing a lot of people are saying that they're kind of glad in a way that we're looking at an opening of the government because the people that have been lost of jobs or not getting paid for their work or not getting their SNAP benefits will be on the good end of that, which I think that's going to be what the president is going to say is a victory. So I mean, excuse me. How do you feel about that? Because it can go either way, but personally, I feel like they caved.
Yeah,
The
okay.
Democrats caved. But how
Mhm.
you feel, Mr. Boots on the ground?
Well, I've been like a shark in the ocean. I'm ready to bite on this forever. But first, I want to thank Carl for coming on. In case I did had a bad connection while I'm at sea. So, Carl, thank you for stepping in and being here. And I also like to say hi again to Miss Lauren because last time we met was at the Capitol when I had my flag, and she came up and she said, "You must be crazy." So, so, but let me talk about this.
Did you have your shirt
You
on?
know,
Did you have the F
I had
Trump
both of
shirt on?
them on. I
Okay.
had my flag and my shirt. But look,
Okay.
first thing I have to say, and Carl knows this, I left the Democratic Party last year just because of this, because I cannot be associated with weakness. Uh, I've been Democrat ever since I was able to vote. And I said before it happened that they're going to cave, just like they did in the first time in Trump's first term. the Democrats always cave, and they always cave at the moment when they don't have to cave. And
Exactly.
I was so pissed off I couldn't even go to sleep last night when I heard that last vote came in, and that because I hate I sometimes I like to be wrong, but when it comes to the strength of the Democratic Party, I'm always right. They always capitulate. They always take a step backward after they made a grand step forward. Now they had these people on the run. They had them on the run, but they got scared because they had some people complaining about being at the airport delayed for a minute, or they complaining about some people saying they're going to miss a few meals. Now let's be honest, the average American can afford to lose a couple of meals, especially some of our people. So don't give me those lame excuses about food and about bills and stuff like that. I mean, come on now. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet in order to get ahead. And we were ahead. We had these victories. And then, I wrote you the letter. I said when the new governor gave that conciliatory speech, I already knew we were going downhill because Steinberger went through hell and this thing, and then Steinberger gonna come up here and make that conciliatory statement that Democrats always make, and we all in this together. We got to get hell with all that stuff now. I'm tired of all this BS. I'm trying to be nice, trying to play the political correct game. When we're dealing with a monster, we're dealing with a person who's going around here blowing people up in the ocean. And to this date, he haven't been brought up for international crimes for it. He's blowing people up in the ocean. He's starving people all over the world. He's starving people in Africa. He's starving people in Haiti. He's starving people in South America. And he's starving people here. And you're gonna go and capitulate when you had him on the run. That's why I left the Democratic Party. Now, Carl might want to speak to that. Lauren might want to speak to that. But I'm telling you, I'm tired of this weak party that we have no other choice to be a part of but to be a part of these people, and they're weak. And like Lauren said, it's a shame. Are you sure that Chuck Schumer's from New York? I mean, come on, New Yorkers are some of the toughest people I know. And this man, he ain't done nothing but bend down, bow over, and like you say, Hakeem Jeffries. I think he should just disassociate himself. I mean, I know these people want power. They want to stay there. They want to keep getting these lunches and stuff like that. But come on, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it.
Let me ask Lauren a question. Lauren, if you think Nancy Pelosi was still as active as she has been, would she have agreed to this situation that we're in now? What are your feelings on that?
Yes.
No, she would have figured
Yes,
out
she
not
would
to. No way. I mean, she's a different type of a leader. She's an Aries. I think her birthday's a day before mine. She's like, March 24. My birthday is March 25. Anyway, she has a different leadership style. I do think what has happened, Schumer has been there so long that when I was an intern, I think he was just coming into the Senate when I was an intern. So he's been there a while. He's been there a long time. And what happens is these people become friends. The Senate is much different from the House. It's only 100 people. You get to know the people. And then next thing you know, people are making these sort of deals in the cloakroom that have nothing to do. And the other problem, there's a disconnect there too, because most of the senators are multimillionaires and they don't live the experience that normal people are living. And they don't have people in their family that live the experience that normal people are living. And if you're from New York, particularly with Schumer's case, he's got my grandmother bought a brownstone in Brooklyn in the 1950s, which was then considered a single family house. Now would be, you'd have to be a multimillionaire to buy anything now, whether it was a brownstone or anything else in the five boroughs in New York. But Schumer lives in Brooklyn. Schumer is I think a person with no urgency. I see no urgency there. You can see it with these folks that come in like the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez types and in local politics in Virginia, Jackie Glass is a good example of this, where it's a real person that had a middle class life, went to the military, all that. And that means something when you show up in Washington or in Richmond and issues come up that you had to personally maybe deal with. And I think Schumer is a long way from that. Now, you do have wealthy people like Nancy Pelosi who are wealthy, but still keep in mind how the other half lives, if you will. Certainly the Kennedy family, they were like that as well. But I'm just saying that, there is a leadership style going on right now that is just too weak for the moment in history that we're in. And it showed itself once again last night.
Once again.
Yeah, like Pelosi wouldn't have let that deal go through with
No,
not being
no.
involved, and Schumer wasn't even involved. How can the
Yeah.
leader not be involved in such a deal like that? You have it's
You'll notice a lot of people who are
politics.
retiring that are involved.
Yes.
A lot of retirees that are involved. Like, so one of the senators, Gene Shaheen, is retiring next
Right.
cycle.
They don't have anything to lose.
Exactly.
Nothing to lose.
Exactly. So they just put all that
Walk
together.
away millionaires.
Yep. It's
May I interject this point? I said it earlier, and Lauren, I hope you picked up on it. So I'm going to say it again, because I don't think that people listening don't always assume that what you see is what's going on. There's some assumptions being made here that I don't think is quite accurate. And I think, Lauren, I'm going to ask you to use your experience on Capitol Hill. There's some things that goes on every day. One of the things that always amazes me is not what gets published in the newspaper or what comes on television. It's those things you will never read about or hear about because they don't be allowed on television. Let me give you just one example why I don't necessarily buy into this notion that the cave is done, it's already completed. All of us should understand what the process is. We can start off with the Senate. The Senate has to reach its conclusion, and then it goes to the House of Representatives. Do anybody not understand why the House of Representatives have not been meeting?
Yes.
Have we forgotten that? Have we forgotten this on the table? On the table, I'm going to repeat myself, on the table, this whole Epstein issue.
That Epstein files.
Now,
That's right.
They know what I know. Don't make the assumption that it's all done, it's all over. Listen, my understanding having something to do with politics, I think I know a little bit about it. Politics is not checkers, it's chess. You anticipate what the next moves of people are going to be. And while I've got this opportunity, let me just share something that I think too many people are not paying attention to. Politics, this is not for the faint of the heart. People better understand what's going on in this country. It's not by accident or coincidence that you see people's voices being silent. You really think that you got this monolithic view within the Republican Party and all the Republicans are just falling into place? Somebody should be asking the question, why is this going on? Why? And my answer to that is, and I think time will prove me to be correct, when you hear people accusing people of doing things, sometimes it's a reflection of what they're doing. Remember, they made the argument that the Democrats were weaponizing the the Justice Department. Well, that's precisely what Republicans are doing. And just to make it crystal clear, and Lauren, there are 100 senators in the United States Senate, and there are 435 representatives. And what people have forgotten from history is how weaponizing the Justice Department has been used effectively. I'm old enough to remember J. Edgar Hoover. I know how they kept the dossiers. Do you know how many people who hold public office in Washington, D.C. are nervous because of what could be revealed?
And Epstein.
Let me just make this one last point. The one thing, you may say a lot of things about Trump, but the one thing Trump does not have any problem doing is using the power that he has to make his enemies pay a price. And there are people who, Democrats and Republicans, to emphasize the Republican part, who got things in their closet that they'd prefer to keep in the closet. And this man is not playing a game, and he's got the kind of people in the Justice Department who will go to a convicted sex offender, have an hour-long discussion with her, and what most people, while everybody's talking about this so-called shutdown coming to an end, what most people are missing and it's on the news again this morning, but it's not getting the attention people have it. They're already talking about commuting her sentence. You think that's ethical?
Of course.
So anyway, I just wanted to make the point that I don't think we have a foregone conclusion that the blue wave didn't make a difference, that Democrats are caved in. I think there are a lot of dynamics going on, many of them unrecognized. And Jeffries, since Lauren is from New York, you should know what Jeffries' problem is in New York. You know why he didn't come out and couldn't endorse the mayor. Come on, let's just be real. What's going on in New York City and all over the country? People are using the political power they believe they have to advance their particular interests. And I think
their interest, yes. Let me say this. I heard some feedback, and Lewis, I put you on mute because I think it was coming from you. If you have a secondary audio source, turn it off, or if you don't, I'll just leave you muted until you're ready to talk. But I was getting feedback, and it was coming from your end. But anyway, thanks, Carl. And I think one of the reasons we have these platforms so we can inform people who watch, what's really going on, and to have the two of you here to give us that kind of information. I think people need to hear it, and they don't necessarily hear it on the traditional news readers. And I'm not putting all of them down. A lot of them are really doing some great work out there, but this is where the rubber meets the road. The truth comes out. So we appreciate you both. But let's talk a little bit about the blue wave and the effects. I don't think I think the momentum is still there, but what do we need to do to make sure it stays there? Because, so many times we get victories in our communities and in our parties, and we sit back and say, oh, wow, what a great victory. Let's let's go to Buckrow. That's a term that we used to use down here in Virginia. Let's go to Buckrow. But that was getting away from everything. So what do we need to do to stay laser focused to make sure we don't lose? Even with what's going on now, we don't lose that traction we have with the blue wave. And Carl, it was good you mentioned the other places that it happened. Because it happened in more places than the 3 states that getting all the press. And it needs to be known that it's happening, in Atlanta, it's happening in other places. So anybody, Lauren, you can address that right now, starting off.
Well, I mean, a few things. One is that certainly there needs to be a formal Black agenda, not in just Virginia, but for a lot of these legacy civil rights groups. As you can see, the Trump administration is targeting Black Lives Matter because, of course, there's nothing that gets racists more crazy than to watch Black people raise $94 million. That'll do it every time. So at any rate, there needs to be a Black agenda right now. You see that there's going to be a record number of African Americans in the Virginia General Assembly next year. I think it's going to be 37. What happens in politics, and I don't want to overcomplicate, Carl. I get what you're saying. What's really going on in the background. What's really going on in the background is that corporate influence has greatly impacted our politics. Corporate money has greatly impacted our politics. And so a lot of what you're watching, and for Virginia, that's meant Dominion Power and some others, but Dominion is the #1 corporate donor. And you will notice that as your electrical rates go up, that there's no conversation in the General Assembly about that. Right now, when I worked for Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, we had 3 people that would bring it up. Chap Peterson, who is no longer in the Senate. Senator Suderline, who's from Roanoke, brings it up still. He is in the Senate. We would have Lionel Sproul pushing back on them because Lionel Sproul was getting a bunch of money from Dominion, to keep it very frank. And that is what is happening writ large. Now, when I hear the words, we may not know what's going on in the background, we do know what's going on in the background. We can see it in the results. If you drive around Portsmouth or Norfolk or Newport News or Hampton, you can see that there is a disconnect in all the taxes that we're paying and all the money that we pay for all the things that we pay for that go into the, economy of Virginia in this case. is not necessarily coming back to community, and there's a reason for that. Now, we do have a situation, a historic situation, where 3 Black people are in charge of the money, really. Now, you got to realize in Virginia, the governor does have line item ability, which makes the governor extremely powerful. But we have Louise Lucas, as I'm sure everyone knows, Louise Lucas, Portsmouth's own Louise Lucas, in charge of the money. And of course, Luke Torian on the House side in charge of the money. And of course, you have Speaker Scott in charge of that conversation. And since now they have a Democrat coming in, there should be a very interesting set of moments that goes on with regard to money allocation to certain cities that have not gotten it, like Portsmouth, Virginia. I would be looking for that. And there needs to be some community organization pushing for that. And I don't, as somebody, speaking of chess, I mean, every political discussion I get into now, somebody brings up chess. They're playing chess and we're playing checkers. I used to actually play tournament level chess when I was in high school. I was the board 2 of 5 boards. And, it's not complicated. Your people who are in politics that you elect have got to bring home results at some point. And there will be no excuses next year for the Democrats in Virginia, and particularly specifically in Portsmouth, Virginia.
That's right.
Not to bring home results. And I'm talking into the millions and millions of dollars. There should be no shame. There should be no hesitation or anything else. Okay. So there needs to be a Black agenda. What does happen, we've all seen it. The state NAACPs in a lot of ways get co-opted politically by the Democratic Party, meaning that no issue can ever come up for the NAACP in the state that's in disagreement with the Democratic Party. That's a problem, because there are going to be issues that the Black community faces disproportionately that are going to not agree with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has no particular interest in helping Black communities. I mean, we in our politics are controlled by the money. Black organizations typically don't have the lobbying money, but they have the vote power. We big time have the vote power. And in a 20% Black state, and, Mr. Snowden, in your case, in Maryland, a 34% Black state, right? And so the way politics operates, though, in Virginia, to me, is a little bit too lacking in aggressiveness. This is why I'm a Don Scott fan, even though we may have our disagreements from time to time. I like that type of personality. I like the aggressive personality of a Don Scott. You need somebody like that has sort of the attitude of, I'm here to get things done and not just sit around quiet during my time. So he doesn't have that personality, and it's rare in Virginia. But what I've noticed in Virginia is that there is no push in the Black community for a plan of action, a Black agenda, if you will, that is put down. And it has to be put down, I think, in this particular example, independent of the NAACP in Virginia. No offense to Cozy Bailey and the gang. Cozy Bailey's been great, as opposed to who they had before him, who was just, to me, a joke. But at any rate, Cozy Bailey's okay, but there's got to be some sort of push there on these legislators to get things done. And the reason it doesn't happen is, and I'll just land with this and let everybody comment, is that the way that candidates are selected, to bring up Jackie Glass again, with the exception of a Jackie Glass that gets in there on her own, almost by accident, right? The party selects people who go along with the party. And when the party selects people who go along with the party, that doesn't mean good things a lot of times for Black communities. And particularly when the moneyed interest makes that decision. In this case, a lot of times it's Emily's List, Planned Parenthood.
That's right.
Those big money groups that pick these candidates, and then all of a sudden they get in there and talk about things that have nothing to do with Black communities. That's problematic. So, I know I'm saying a lot here, but there's a lot to say when it comes to Black political leadership that needs to get figured out before January 2026.
Wow. That was a statement.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah, I mean, there's just
that was a statement.
But I think people are aware of it. You on the local level in Portsmouth. Portsmouth is a great example. Portsmouth, Norfolk. I know I've got my Virginia Tech hat on. That's really because of Michael Vick, but I do have a Norfolk State hat in the background. It just doesn't fit very well. At any rate,
Can I send you a Virginia Union hat?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that'd
It's
be
the
great.
same colors of
Yeah,
what you have
that'd
on
be
there.
great.
Same colors
I would
of
say this
what you have on there.
Virginia Union has got like the best mascot. They got that panther. It's like you tell me if that's like
We're getting some feedback.
but at
We're
any
getting
rate,
some feedback.
we got some
Wait a
feedback.
minute. Yeah, I heard. Yeah.
It's me. It's I think it's me. But at any rate, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Virginia Tech, I have nothing really to do with Virginia Tech other than I like red and I like Michael Jordan. There's no complicated reason. Yeah. It's Bracy. I know it's Bracy that's giving us that
It's,
feedback. But
yeah,
anyway,
it's Bracy because every time I try to bring you back, Bracy, I heard the feedback. But
it's all
anyway,
good.
before you others comment, I'm glad you said what you said, Lauren, because I asked that because I wonder about the momentum, and when I look at the turnout, especially here in the city of Portsmouth,
Right.
44%. And we got 69,000 registered voters and 31,000 people voted.
Right.
41%. Okay, and it's the same thing in Norfolk, Newport News, and Virginia Beach. The cities in Hampton Roads that need to really be involved. When I looked at Suffolk, 70% of the people voted.
Mm-hmm.
But you see the most progression there. You see things
do.
happening in
Right.
Suffolk. So, we really need to get the people and the people that are really need. And I checked out throughout Virginia. You saw a lot of Northern Virginia cities voting over 50%. But when you come back down here to Hampton Roads, we're at below 50%. So we have to do better, as especially here in Hampton Roads and getting out the vote and getting the word out and keeping people excited. But evidently, with our messaging, evidently we're not getting to some people here in Portsmouth, Norfolk, Newport News, where the need, where we need more than anybody in the state, and we have the people here, like you mentioned, Louise Lucas and Don Scott is from Portsmouth. We have quite a few, and Jackie Glass. I like what she's doing, as a sort of grassroots person. So,
Mm-hmm.
And others can chime in,
Let
is
me
that where we need to keep that momentum going, making sure people get out to vote? I mean, that goes without saying, really. But
well,
what do we need to do to get that messaging out, to get those people off their butts?
But
well,
James,
first,
may I ask before anyone else jumps in, do you feel, Lauren and the Honorable Carl Snowden, do you feel that with all of the misinformation and the media overload, that what impact do you feel that has had on people being informed as to how to vote? There's so much misinformation out there, people just don't know how to vote. And what are your thoughts on the misinformation out here?
well, let me just say this. It's very important for people to understand, and it just amazes me that people assume that if you elect black folks in public office, your life is going to change automatically. That doesn't. I'm beyond that. I'm I'm in favor of electing effective black people as a
Thank
public
you.
office. Just because you
Thank
got
you.
somebody black in office doesn't make a difference. And the word accountability has to be used. The reality is, and for those of you in Virginia, let me give you a Marylander experience that you need to. I want to make sure people understand expectations. We in Maryland have a black governor. We have a black attorney general. We have the
Right.
black speaker of the House. We got the largest black legislative caucus in the nation.
Right.
You're
Right.
talking about 37 people coming into the House of Representatives in Virginia. We got 56. I
Mm.
just want you to understand it's not about just having black people in office, it's having effective black
Effective.
people in office.
Yes.
Can I tell you something that most people will be stunned to know? That in Maryland, when we had 13, not 56, but 13 black elected officials, we were the second state in the nation to pass Martin Luther King's birthday as a state holiday. Virginia didn't do that for many, many decades later.
Right.
My point
Right.
is having effective black people. And since you're from Lauren from New York, let me just make it clear to you. I'll take an Adam Clayton Powell any day.
Any
over
day.
Adam Clayton Powell understood how to use power.
He
Right.
did.
He understood that he was
He
living
did.
in the same exact conditions that
Right.
Trump was living in.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's changed. The power structure was the same. Jews had an incredible power in New York
Mhm.
State.
Mhm.
Power is good power. And one of the things I loved about power, and for me in Maryland, Perrin Mitchell was my guy. Perrin Mitchell was one of the founding members of the
Mhm.
And I just want to give two examples, and I want people just to check this out. Don't take my word for it. Thanks to Google, you can Google this. You ought to Google this question. Is black people, no, Google this statement. Black people are 3 to 5 times more likely to be audited by the IRS. If you put that in, you Google that, you're going to come up with these articles from the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, all the papers y'all think are legitimate. And those newspapers are going to report that in 2023, under Biden, I might add, when Biden was president, they had a study that showed that if you were black in America, you are 3 to 5 times more likely to be audited. Now let's use common sense. If black people make up 15% of the population, how is it possible that you're 3 to 5 times more likely to be audited? And when you look
Wow.
up that story, what you're going to discover is that this was a national story. And I want people to hear me. This is what I mean by accountability. There was not a single, I hope y'all hear me, there was not a single black congressperson in my state, in Maryland, and I don't think Bobby Scott did it in Virginia.
Mhm.
When this report came out, there was no town hall meeting by black leaders in Congress saying if you got a letter from the IRS to audit you, here's what you need to do. When my congressman, Perrin Mitchell, was living, he'd been all over that. He'd had a town hall meeting. He'd tell black people. Remember, one of the things that I just cannot emphasize enough, I tell Lewis this all the time. Leadership is about leading. It's not about a title. I love the fact that we have a black governor, and I'm gonna do everything I can to get him reelected. But I'm not a fool. I understand what's going on. Politics, when you talk about a black agenda, do not assume that means that nobody else got an agenda. Other folks' agendas out there. So we're competing. And lastly, I just want people to remember politics. I saw someone mention John Lewis going across the bridge in 19.
Mhm.
We are relatively new to this game called politics in this country. Black people have power. And what I'm trying to say to our folks, as clear as I can, when you elect somebody to office, black or white, I want to emphasize, you want to hold them accountable. The only question any voter should be asking any candidate,
Accountability.
straight, male, whatever their politics is, the only question you should be asking is the following. If I vote for you, how will you improve the quality of life of my family, my community, and my people? And if you answer that question, you ought to be voting for somebody else. The reality is we should hold people accountable for those things they promise. It's not enough. And that's why I don't think those who run the anti-Trump stuff, that's not enough. People need to know that if I vote for you, how will it make my life better? And one of the things I'm trying to advocate here with our governor in Maryland, he should be bold. If I'm real, here's what I'm going to do. And then do it. And then people see there's a correlation between how they vote and the improvement of their lives. One of the last things I just, again, want to understand, Brother James, is this. It is not up to politicians to liberate us. They've never done that. There's nowhere anywhere in history where you find that. Frederick Douglass said it so well. Where there's progress, there's protest. Where there's no protest, there's no progress. We have to understand, as Dr. King said so many years ago, power, real power, means having General Motors say yes when they really want to say no. That's power. And that's what we need to be able to do, is to make sure our folks understand the power they have is in that vote. The power they have is the ability to say to a person, Democrat or Republican, mayor or senator, if you don't reflect my interests, you won't get my vote. You can't have greater power than that.
Well, you
Agreed.
said it. You said it's something I always talked about, the power in the vote, and sometimes we don't realize how much power we
Mhm.
have.
James,
Uh,
and accountability.
and
Accountability.
accountability.
We do not hold people accountable
Right.
to us for our
Right.
vote. We let them take our vote and run with it and do whatever they want to do with it. You
Right.
know? So
Right. There's nobody
we have
providing political leverage.
yes,
And without
yes,
political leverage, without someone saying, if you don't do this, this is going to happen, there is no leverage.
no leverage at
And
all.
when you look at Virginia, I'm not sure who's providing that leverage. We were told this entire campaign in the background that, oh no, just vote. You hear it all every cycle. This happens. Vote Democrat, and we'll take care of everything. Will be fine. And well, this is definitely going to be one, particularly since the Democrats control everything by almost a supermajority in the Virginia House. This is going to be the one where if something doesn't happen that is quite noticeable in terms of results, it's going to be a very
This is
interesting
it.
conversation.
This
I
is
can
it.
already tell, like by my, the signal chains I'm on and the text chats I'm on. It's, you can tell that there are a group of Black folks out there. Some of them are in office, some of them are not. Some of them are former leaders. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But they sense that. They sense that. Look, you can't just keep telling people to vote and vote and vote and have no results on the back end.
Mhm.
And when you
That's so
do,
true.
and when you do have results on the back end, people respond.
Right.
Exactly.
My mother lived to be 104 years old. And
Wow.
one of the things my mother would get, the one thing that would make her angry, and she would just go crazy when somebody would say this. And generally, it was somebody ignorant or somebody who was young, sometimes combination of both. But when someone would say, nothing has changed in America, my mother would say, what? Was born before women had the right to vote.
Right.
My mother was born when segregation, and Virginians should understand this well, it was American style apartheid.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, this is the way it was. People
Right.
lived through that. And so we're at this point in history now where Black people are achieving positions of power they've never held before.
Right.
Question becomes, how do we collectively use our power? And one final example I really want people to understand,
Mhm.
and you have to be of my generation to appreciate this. So Lewis will get this. Anybody of my generation will know this. There's an 82-year-old woman who's Black right now walking the streets of California, and it had not been for Black people using their power, she would be dead. Her name was Angela Davis. She was
Yes.
to go to the gas chamber in 1972.
Right.
1972, Ronald Reagan said, we need to make sure that this woman dies. And
Right.
Black people all over the nation who had never even heard of Angela Davis. By the
Right.
way, she had a beautiful afro. Those of you,
Yeah.
everywhere you saw, there was this word all over the country: free Angela, free Angela, free Angela. And I want people to realize the power we have. And I keep saying to folks, because people want to have you believe you don't have any power.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela walked out of a prison into the presidency of South Africa because of who did that. Barack Obama didn't get elected president by accident or by coincidence. People literally gave their lives
Right.
to make it possible. And a black woman who was in line for 3 hours, when they asked her the question, "Aren't you tired?" She looked up and said, "Tired? You know how long I've been waiting to be able to vote for a Black president?
Right.
I'll stay here all night long if necessary." That was the kind of determination that our people had. And people who live through certain eras know what we're capable of doing. But what I don't think people understand is the other side understands things too. Lauren, you mentioned corporate America. I wish people really understood who funds Black candidates running for public office.
Right.
The list. How are you going to? Oh man, we just have to hold people accountable, and by putting information out, and the misinformation that's been given to people is also disinformation.
Exactly.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican. That part's true. Martin Luther King Jr. would have you vote Republican. Both. Where you come up with? And for those of you who time on the internet, there's something called paid. I want you to hear me, because black people, we sometimes get confused. They're paid mercenaries. They're black trolls whose job it is, these white right-wing people use their black faces, pay them money. People aren't
Yes.
aware of this. So you see some black guy coming on internet saying, I love Donald Trump. Donald Trump's the best thing that ever happened.
Oh,
He's not
tell it, tell it,
He's been
tell it.
being paid.
Yes.
How are you going to get mad with Lil Wayne, who gave $6 million to get a pardon from Donald Trump? Sure, Lil Wayne gonna say he okay with me. He took him out of jail. Once you understand the information, it's clear who's coming from where, and you don't get caught in the foolishness. And finally, I want to thank you, Virginians. Y'all did something for me that I'm so happy about. You took a crazy black woman who's running for your governor.
Thank you.
All this time talking about trans and how they were out there. You folks sent her a clear message. We want.
And Carl, and that man who she loved so much up there in Washington did not lift a
Come
finger
on,
to take up her. He
Yes.
did not endorse her. He didn't mention her name at any time.
That was
Well, I
because he
think-
had criticized him. She had
Yes.
criticized
Yes.
him and said the party needed to move on. And of course, he remembers all of that. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, he doesn't.
Everything.
He's got an elephant memory as far as that's concerned.
I'm looking at what something Brenda Carter wrote, saying that, can you imagine the power we would have if every black citizen was a registered voter? I think it's the power we would have if every black citizen was a knowledgeable voter,
Right.
an informed voter.
That's the
More
point.
so than a registered
Knowledgeable.
voter. Okay.
well,
And
you know,
Leah, you and I go back as far as knowing Winsome Sears.
Yes.
Back when she was kind of
I
local
remember
here.
when she started.
And, yeah, so she's always been a problem, and she was just introduced to a lot of people, and she didn't disappoint.
yeah.
As far as how she was back then and how she is now. So I'm sorry, I didn't. Lauren, you were saying.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, I think a few things. I see somebody has written, Orlenia Lewis is writing that we have folks in power who never lived the struggle. You know, keep in mind, it is a very individual thing. I mean, we have somebody in Virginia, I would argue, is the most powerful black elected official in Virginia, and that's Bobby Scott, your congressman, who did not live the struggle. He went to a private school up north because his father sent him up because of massive resistance.
Right.
His father was a surgeon, a historic black doctor, a historic black surgeon. He didn't necessarily live the struggle, but he totally understands, you know, who he's fighting for when he goes to Washington. And those results have been clear because he's moved millions of dollars to the HBCUs and everything else, and now fighting for healthcare. So it's kind of a very individual thing. You could have the most bougie Jack and Jill character show up and they fight for the poor, and then you could have somebody who's an activist that doesn't understand what's going on. So it's like you got to just really be careful about the candidates that are selected. My only point there was that the party picking the candidates sometimes has been problematic. They do pick a certain type of person. That type of person tends to be the go along to get along type, because that's what the party needs to operate, right? You need somebody that just goes along with the program. And what this life demands is people who will raise their hand at inconvenient times and say, wait a minute, what are we doing? You know? So that's a complicated question, but Slim, what you said about black voters, we are voting at 90+% for the Democratic Party, and we should be demanding something for that. Big time. We should be demanding a lot for that.
Right. We don't speak up, and all this sounds like local politics in Portsmouth, doesn't it, Leah? It's like
I was so
City USA, but
in this last election, I just sat back. I said, I can't be involved. Can't be involved. So some of the decisions that were made, I said, I just cannot, within my heart, feel good about myself to be involved in what was going on in the local election. It was sad. It was sad.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to share with your audience, and this is one people, because we live through a period. My background is that of a historian. I study history. I read history. I know things a lot of people just don't know. But I want to give one example, just so we all know, because I don't think everybody know what time it is. If you ask the average black person, why did Vice President Harris lose the election to Trump. They give you all kinds of explanations as to why she lost, got in it too late, Biden, all kinds of foolishness. And then you ask this question, which I asked everybody on this line and people that's listening. Think of the most revered Black person in history, living or dead, whoever you consider the most revered. If it's for you, if it happens to be Barack Obama, fine. If it's Martin Luther King Jr., fine. If it's Shirley Chisholm, fine. If it's Oprah Winfrey, whoever you think is the most revered Black person, living or dead, in history. And then follow it with this question. Whoever you have in mind, if you think it's Martin Luther King Jr. or you think it's somebody else that was the most revered, answer this question. If Martin Luther King Jr. was running for president of the United States, had been convicted of 34 felons, and had been found liable for sexually assaulting a white woman, could he have won? And everybody, with white and Black, by the way,
right,
say absolutely not. Then you pause and you say, okay, if Martin King couldn't have won under those circumstances, name one single Black person in America history that could have won under those conditions.
Not
and
one.
You will find not a single Black person
or
white will be able to name that. And then when I stop and ask this question, which is the punchline question, how did Donald Trump get elected? And before you go off into this notion about the machines being rigged and all that, no. We're in a stage of American history right now where I think people are not paying attention.
Exactly.
The folks who came to power are really clear. You might not like what they're doing, but they're clear. Anybody who don't understand that Trump don't like Black people, that Trump and his ilk is moving to turn back the clock, he's as clear as he could be. And we want to pretend that it got something to do with foolishness. It's racism and sexism right in front of our face. And they're not playing.
Right in our face.
Before they would have a Black woman,
thank you,
who had been endorsed by the AKA, they'll take a white man who was endorsed by the KKK because they understood that white man. And the last thing, and Lewis has heard this many times, but I'm just so angry when people don't do their history. 54% of all white women, those white women that was concerned about so-called reproductive rights, 54% of all white women in 2016 supported Trump. When it came to 2024, when a Black woman was running against Trump, 60% of all
Tell
white
it like it is.
Even more.
That's right.
Amazing.
You're looking at these, your so-called allies. You better pay attention to not what they say, but what they do. And if you turn an election across the country in 2024, where reproductive rights was on the ballot, white women voted for reproductive rights, and at the same time
voted for
Donald Trump. And we don't take the time to understand what's going on. It's called racism, and we want to pretend it's something else. It's racism,
and we got to wake up and be vigilant. We got to wake up and actually see for ourselves. We have to get to listen to some of these Black media sources so we can hear the true story. We take things for granted. You know, we let them tell us anything and we ingest it and believe it to be so. We just have to. It's sad.
Smart, but Leah, we're smarter than people give us credit for.
Yeah.
One of the things that I just think that people need to hear, a Black guy told me this, Lewis, Daryl Jones told me the one thing a white man told him that helped him tremendously was the following. He said, you Black people think we white people are smarter than we actually are. And that's true. The fact of the matter is Trump thought he could do something to Black people that didn't happen. And we need to take credit for this. People think the reason why Trump sent folks into Chicago, into Washington, D.C., into Memphis, where these Black communities, he wanted Black people to respond to create what called civil unrest so he could declare martial law.
Exactly.
We as a people didn't fall for that.
Exactly.
He went to Chicago, had a white man in Chicago wearing an ICE uniform, calling Black people niggers. And Black people didn't respond. He thought, oh, we're going to
Mhm.
but we're smarter than they give us credit for.
Yeah, we are paying attention, but we need to pay attention a little more. Well, more of us, I'll put it that way. But we need to close out now. And Lewis, I want to give you an opportunity to, if you have some last comments, and then Lauren, I want you to let people know how they can follow you and be a part of the Black Virginia News and your podcast, the many things you're doing. And
Mhm.
Kyle, thank you for your insight. You always, that's why we like to have that DMV connection. Uh,
Mhm.
and I'm not talking about the Virginia motor, I mean, the motor
Motor
vehicles.
vehicle.
I'm talking about Maryland, DC, and Virginia. We need that connection.
Yeah.
We all here together. But Lewis, go ahead and give us some comments. And Lewis, don't take us to Africa. We'll have another show when we go there.
Mhm.
Lewis is
Okay.
my
Well, first thing,
classmate, so we can joke like that. Go ahead, Lewis.
yeah. Well, first thing, I didn't have any electronic issues or nothing in here. I don't know what caused the feedback, um, and
It
it
could have been
lost
somewhere
signal.
else. It could have been
But
somewhere else.
but I was been here listening. But I just like to say first thing, I want to thank Lauren for coming on the show, because I sent you her information the same day we met at the Capitol. So we
Mhm.
got to get this woman on the show, and I'm glad that we was able to do that. And again, I thank Carl for coming in and give the input that he gives all the time. Always hit the point. And I want to close out with the accountability thing that Leah is talking about, and that is that we have to hold our own people accountable. I would like to find out myself what was the turnout like, as to say in the hood. And you know what I mean by the hood,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if we can't reach that level of our people if the 2026 elections come up, we're gonna be in trouble, because we need to get that element into um, voting and understanding that everything that happens applies to them. And I'm talking about the people that may be on WIC, the people may be on any kind of assistance, uh, any kind of housing assistance, whatever. We have to get our people on all levels involved in what's going on in politics. And we got to hold our own people accountable. Not only just a politician, we have to hold our own people accountable to achieve what we need to achieve in this country. And we can't do that if we have 40% of our people not participating in the system that will benefit all of us. So holding our own people accountable, as well as holding the politicians accountable. We have to do that, but we have to have all our people, or as many of our people as possible, involved in this system that we live in under. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and Lewis, we're gonna do a show for Portsmouth, precinct by precinct, and telling how it went, because that's what the politicians look at,
Mhm.
and that's
Exactly.
how if you see things happening in your neighborhood or that's your special interest, because they looked at how people voted in different precincts and different neighborhoods. So we need to be
That's right.
aware of that so we can step it up. If you want to get attention from the politicians, you need to get out there. So we're going to do a precinct by precinct. Okay, Lauren. Well, Leah, do you have?
I want to say thank you, James, first for bringing Portsmouth Coffee Talk back. Thank you so very much, Lauren, and the Honorable Carl Snowden. Thank you both. Because this election, because of the local foolishness that was going on, I had become totally disenchanted. I had gotten to the point I've given all of these years in this democratic political world that I had said
You
that was
even
it
worked
for
at
me.
the Capitol. You worked at the Capitol for a
Yes,
delegate. Yeah, yeah.
I was saying I was through because it had become too negative, too nasty, and people attacking individuals and attacking families, and I just did not want to be a part of that. But I want to thank you all because you all have refreshed me. And I pray that you all will come back again because we need to do this on a regular basis just to keep our people informed. And this is a good venue for us to take care of that. So I'm going to say Look, Mr. Bracy, you know I'm always glad to see you. But I want to really thank the Honorable Carl Snowden and Lauren Burke. Thank you all so very much. You have enlightened my spirit. You've awakened my spirit, should I say? And I just appreciate the both of you, and I appreciate your words. I've listened to what you've said. I know what we need to do, and we need to just put it in. We need to make it happen now, not just listen, but we need to make it happen. So thank you so very
The
much for
2 hour
coming.
show. The 2 hour
Yeah,
show.
Is
yeah.
this
Two
We'll
hour
we'll do
show.
a
Real, real
we'll
short.
do a 2 hour evening show like we did before with a panel.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Leah and Lewis and myself, we all grew up in the same neighborhood, so we and been involved in politics since high school, right, Leah?
That's right. I
Okay.
was excited when I got to cast that vote for John F. Kennedy. That's how far back it goes, Lauren, and don't try to count back. Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't voting then. Okay. Lauren, will you please let people know how they can follow you or watch your platform or watch your lives? You know, you pop up anytime when something is newsworthy. Like I
Yeah,
just happened to catch you last night, and I'm glad I did. You know, I got some insight
yeah,
from you of what was going on because I didn't realize that was happening until I
yeah.
saw
There's a
you
lot
talking
going
about
on.
it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to
Thank you.
both Lewis and Carl and Leah. Thanks for having me. Leah, when it gets negative and things are negative, that's when you know you're probably about to win. You do realize that, right?
Oh, I do. I
I
do.
mean,
I do.
like
I do. I do.
that's because once we get close to winning is when the negativity begins.
Hmm.
I would say, I mean, you can reach me at Black Virginia. If you type in Black Virginia News on Google, it'll come up. One of my emails is in the chat, which is just Black Virginia News at Gmail. And there's a lot going on, to say the least. But I would say that we do have the pieces on the chessboard in the right position. The thing is now the political strategy has to be executed. But it's in the past it's been the case. Somebody who grew up in New York, we didn't have any black members of Congress on Long Island. I grew up on Long Island. I was born in the Bronx, but I grew up on Long Island. We didn't have any black members of Congress or black members of the state legislature. You guys have an embarrassment of riches. I remember when I first started paying attention to Virginia politics. I thought, wow, who is that black congressman over there that they've got down in Newport News? I mean, I have a black congressman. That
Mhm.
was that's a big deal. And in the North, a lot of times you don't have any of that. But I would not despair because negative politics is politics. Politics is a rough business. We have to really keep our eyes on the prize when it comes to who becomes members of Congress. Pay close attention to the seat that some of you may or may not be in, which is the second congressional district. There's going to be a dogfight as to who runs for that seat. There's been a lot of groups pressuring Delegate Michael Fagans of Virginia Beach to run. That would be somebody for the black community that would be quite exciting. And then you're going to see other people trying to run that may or may not be good for the black community, but the black community needs to kick in because we have a lot more power than we think we have. Big time more power than we think we have. And keep in mind, Leo, you were talking about misinformation and disinformation. There are sites out there to combat that and deal with that. If you pay attention online, Midas Touch and the Contrarian and the Bulwark are
Hmm. Hmm.
specifically going against that, as well as talking about the value of democracy. And they're getting hundreds of thousands of followers for a reason. And just watch what happens in the news today. Tim Kaine right now is getting roasted. Our senator is getting roasted on his Facebook for
Yes, he
being one of the
is.
people who went along with the deal last night.
Hmm.
Tim Kaine's a nice guy, but people make mistakes, and big
Yes.
mistakes sometimes. Tim Kaine was one of the first people to assume that Lieutenant Governor Fairfax was guilty with no investigation, no conversation, no courtroom, no jury, no nothing. And that these are things that are huge mistakes that you do have to put pressure on people and tell them when they're making a huge mistake. I think Tim is a good guy, but I think last night was a mistake.
I
But
think so.
we have more power than we think, and I'll see you guys at Vernon Tillage's turkey giveaway.
I will be
The
there.
the turkey giveaways are beginning, and Vernon Tillage, who is, of course, a member of our Portsmouth City Council, is one of the turkey giveaway. He just started last year, which is great. And Otis Williams, of course, has the big one in Suffolk. But great talking to y'all. And anytime you want me to be back on, just call, and I'll come on anytime. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you. We really appreciate you coming on and taking time with us in your busy schedule. And because you follow the Virginia news so well, we want you to have, you know, a presence down here, even though you already have a presence down here in Hampton Roads, but more of a presence here through Coffee Talk. So thanks
Absolutely.
again. We appreciate it. And thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Okay. We appreciate your comments today. And we like when you participate. And that's why we go live. Anyway, thanks a lot. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be our guest on the Portsmouth